text. Facilitator this morning is Mrs. Mary Akin-Ajayi. First of all, I want to say a big thank you to Agile and Clover Anthony's laws. We want to say a big thank you for, agreeing to do this with Kimsa. Thank you so much, Ma. Thank you so much. Got to bar in 2012, and she has over 8 years of vast experience in civil and commercial litigation. She's a certified mediation advocate. Also, she has gained several recognitions, awards. She has worked with the state government, the local government, federal government, very big parastatals on different projects and work that has to do with laws. She was the headliner at the for opportunity. I hope I got that right. Conference on legal challenges facing SMEs in Nigeria. She's also an author. She has authored books and several publications. We're glad to have her this morning. She's going to be taking us through the session. Trust me, you want to listen to her because she has worked a lot of businesses over in Nigeria. Right this morning to learn from her wealth of experience because she has been working with small business owners and she has been, like I said, over 8 years of vast experience working with commercial and civil litigation. So we have the pleasure of welcoming our speaker this morning. Send her a hi in the chat box. Let's show how excited we are. Let's just tell her welcome. We're glad to have you. And I'm sure that we're in for an amazing time. Thank you so much, Ma, for joining us. It's such, a great pleasure to finally meet you. We've been speaking over the phone for over a month now. It's good to.
All right, good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the session. It's good to be here. My apologies about my background. I'm not in the office because I'm currently in transit, but I just had to settle down somewhere for this meeting. Yes. All right. So today I'm told we'll be discussing business laws guiding micro, small, and medium enterprises. That's MSMEs. Now, it's important for us to even know the kind of businesses we categorize as micro or small or medium enterprises. So there are various classifications, actually. Some persons will tell you that for a business enterprise to be regarded as micro, then you need to have 1 to 9 staff. And then for it to be small, you need to have like 9 to 14. For it to be medium, you have like 15 to 20 staff. Of course, those classifications may not really work for us here because sometimes some persons are just sole proprietors looking to, go with businesses and they have 1 or 2 employees. Yes, that's micro. For the CAC, they see it in terms of the turnover of a company to know whether you're a small company or a big company. So let's just get down to the basics for the business laws or for the laws regulating businesses generally. So yes, I will limit it to the very micro, the small and medium ones. I'll leave the big guys out of it. So first of all, I think one of the first laws that guides MSMEs is the Companies and Allied Matters Act, CAMA. Now, many of us may not know CAMA, but I'm sure if you're familiar with the CAC, you know what CAMA is. CAC, the Corporate Affairs Commission, is a commission that ensures that they enforce provisions of the CAMA. Now, so the CAMA was passed in 2020. So please, when you hear CAMA, I'm talking about the Companies and Allied Matters Act. So the CAMA was passed in 2020. Now, what the CAMA does really is the basic registration and regulations. So if you want to carry on business with a business name, either as a registered business name that is a sole proprietorship or a partnership or a company, the first thing you're required to do in law is to register the name. Registration is very important because many times we use names without registration, and then by the time we're ready to register, we go to CAMA to do a name search and we find out that somebody's already using our name. It's always very painful because sometimes we may have built goodwill over time with that name, but because we fail to register, somebody else takes up the name, either accidentally or intentionally, and then they go ahead to register the name, and then we lose the registration. So one of the first laws, one of the basics is the CAMA. because CAMA regulates the registration of these businesses. So whatever business you want to do, be it a sole proprietorship, a partnership, a private company, a public company, even incorporated trustees and NGOs, you have to register with the Corporate Affairs Commission, and it's under the CAMA. So the very first law that applies to businesses is the CAMA. So let's have that at the back of our minds. You can never run away from the CAMA when it comes to business registration. That's the first one. Then another law, now after you have registered and you have crossed the registration hurdle, there are certain things you're required to do even under the CAMA. So if you are a small business, after you register your business, let's say if you're a business name and not a company, when you get your business name and that is ready, you now have to go ahead to open an account if you want a business account. So you don't run an account in your personal name. For those of us who like to separate personal monies from business monies, you now have to register with the FIRS. So you can get a taxpayer identification number, TIN, the TIN. It is that TIN you use in opening a corporate account for either a business name or a registered company. So these are things we need to know at the back of our minds. Now, there is also one thing that is like the elephant in the room. It is called the SCUML, SCUML. Now, the SCUML has been a thorn in the flesh of many business owners because they're always so anxious. Like, what in the world is SCUML, and why do I have to register with SCUML? So first of all, we need to know what the SCUML stands for. SCUML is the Special Control Unit Against Money Laundering. Now, this is for several businesses. It's not every business that requires a SCUML registration, but many businesses require SCUML registration. So you find that when you have registered your company and you have gotten your TIN, you go to the bank and say, oh, please open a bank account for me. And then the bank goes, no, you need to get SCUML. And people are like, oh my God, my lawyer didn't tell me about SCUML. What's SCUML? Why am I doing SCUML? So basically, SCUML is what has been put in place by the government to prevent money laundering, because government has realized that many people register companies for no particular purpose, just to be siphoning money and doing money laundering generally. Now, the question is, what companies need SCUML registration? So please, if you have a company or a business name already registered and you have these among your objects, you would need SCUML registration. If you deal in luxury goods, if you deal in jewelry, earrings, chains, necklaces, wristwatches, if you import and deal in cars or any automobile, if you run a hotel or hospitality business, if you're a tax consultant, if you're an auditing firm, if you run a casino, pools, betting, and other lottery businesses, you need SCUML. If you're an audit firm, accounting firm, and accountants, if you are into consultancy, you would need SCUML registration. Estate surveyors and valuers, real estate dealers, mechanized farming, construction companies, non-governmental organizations, mortgage banks. For all these, you need to have SCUML registration. Now, many people complain that, oh, SCUML is difficult, it's hectic, and all that. So for the requirements, basically, what you need to do is an application, and then you upload certain documents to get your certificate. Yes, it will take a while, and people encounter certain glitches because you have to upload your certificate of incorporation, you have to upload your status report from the CAC now. If you're a company, you upload your details of your directors, you upload their IDs, and then you upload your TIN. So these things always give people issues, but if you run these businesses, you need to get SCUML registration. Also, I noticed that for the SCME, for the SCUML, let me just use the word SCUML. If you are running a business name, for instance, and you say general merchandise, general contracts, that particular nature of business sometimes is suspicious because people use that term just to mean that they will deal in all types of goods, general importation and exportation of whatever. The bank to tell you, please get your SCUML registration. So if you do any of the businesses I mentioned, you will need to get that SCUML registration in order to open a bank account. So that's another thing you look at. Now, another law that applies to small businesses is the company income tax. Yes, if you are a business name, this doesn't apply to you, but if you're a company, no matter how small, Company Income Tax Act would apply to you. Now, if you're a business name, other things would apply. So I'm going to be talking in terms of business names and then small companies, because of course the micro, the small and the medium are within these business names, partnerships, and then small companies. So another law that applies to you is VAT. You can't run away from VAT. VAT is the value added tax, and it is added on services. So basically, when you render services to people, you're supposed to include VAT in your invoice and then take it. VAT is charged at 7.5%. So for instance, let me use the legal industry. If you're a registered law firm and you're registered as a partnership or a sole proprietorship, for instance, and you bill people for, let's say I do an agreement for you, for instance, and I say, oh, my fee for the agreement is 100,000 naira. I have to charge 7.5% of that 100,000 naira as VAT, and you pay both. And then I remit that VAT to the FIRS, the Federal Inland Revenue Services. So VAT is something that is applicable to all businesses. It's chargeable on services. That's value added tax. It's 7.5%. So even though you're not a company, you cannot run away from value added tax. Then, while business names are not subject to company income tax because they're not companies, you have to now pay personal income tax, or what you call pay as you earn, the payee. If you have employees, for instance, you have to contact a tax consultant to help you calculate the tax payable for all these employees based on their earnings. You deduct them and then you remit to the relevant tax authority. Now, this is usually the states where your residents are doing business. For all the 36 states in Nigeria, you pay to your various states. In Lagos, payee and personal income tax is payable to the LIRS, which is the Lagos Internal Revenue Services. For the FCT, you pay to the FIRS because that's the Federal Capital Territory. They do not have a state IRS in Abuja. So you cannot run away from payee. Payee is very, very important. It is a statutory obligation. It cannot be waived. So please, if you have started businesses, you're paying your employees and you're not remitting tax, please get a consultant to calculate the taxable income and what's payable and begin to remit. It is very important. You never can tell what you made it in future, and they ask you to bring 3 years tax clearance and then you cannot furnish it because you've not been paying tax. It's very, very important. You can't run away from it. Another one that is very, very, very important is the Pension Reform Act. If you are a small business and you have 1, 2, 3 employees, you might be able to escape it. But once you have up to 5 employees, you need to comply with the Pension Reform Act. And if you have up to 5 employees, it is the contributory scheme you should run. Contributory scheme means that the employer will contribute his own quota, and then you deduct another quota from the employees' salaries to balance up. So it's usually 8%, 10%. That's 8% employee, 10% employer. It's very important that you have these in place. Again, pension is a statutory obligation once you have up to 5 employees. You cannot run away from it. If you run away from it, now some companies are very important, are very funny, excuse me. They deduct this pension from the employees' salaries, but they don't remit it. An employee can take you to court, which is the National Industrial Court, to enforce remittance of what you have deducted, and also enforce remittance of what you are supposed to contribute to that scheme. Now, if you don't have up to 5 employees, there's also what we call the voluntary pension scheme. So it's voluntary. For instance, I may decide that, okay, even though my office were not up to 5, for example, I can say, oh, I wish that my employer would deduct a particular amount from my monthly income and just remit it into a pension account for me. And that can be done so that when I decide to retire, even though I have always been in a small business, I would have my pension fund somewhere for me. So that's that. So pension it could be voluntary, it could be contributory. Voluntary, of course, is not compulsory. Just as the word suggests, it's voluntary, you choose to. But once it's contributory, it is statutory and you have to comply with it. Another law that applies to small businesses is the Labor Act. Okay, we cannot run away from labor laws, because once you run a business, you begin to employ other persons. So I always advise small businesses that no matter how small a business is, have a structure. When you employ staffs, give them a letter of employment and document their terms of employment, so that everything is documented and you don't do things off the books. It's always good to have things properly documented. So the Labor Act applies to small, micro, and medium enterprises, no matter how small. The labor law applies to you. So you have issues relating to, okay, your salary has to be documented in the letter, your time of resumption to work, the time you close. Yes, another one thing that causes issues a lot in businesses is termination of employment. So you need to state in your letter of employment or your terms of employment the things that could warrant termination of employment. In the case you want to terminate, what is the notice period? Notice is something that always causes trouble in employment, from micro to small to medium and to even the big multinationals. They always have issues when it comes to giving notices to sorry, what's the word again? Termination notice. Okay, notice in lieu of termination, payment in lieu of notice, and all those things. So the labor law is very important. You have to take into cognizance these things. Now, if you also have a number of employees, you may think of doing health insurance for them. So the health insurance scheme also applies. Some institutions are required to do group life insurance. It is mandatory for some employments. Now, like I said, if you have less than 5, you're fine. So the whole group insurance thing will not apply to you, but to some employments, it applies. You need to have health insurance for your staff. So like I said, company income tax applies to companies. Once you're a company, you have to pay company income tax. Now, capital gains tax also applies to certain companies. It is the tax you pay when you dispose of assets belonging to a company. So that's the capital gains tax. It doesn't apply to everybody, but it applies to some persons. There is also the stamp duty. Stamp duty also applies in certain instances. Now, the laws that apply to businesses are very, 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 very vast. It depends on the area of business you do. Okay, so if you're a company, for instance, there is the education tax that is 2% of your annual profits that you also pay. That is for companies, and this is also applicable. So now, the laws that applies, like I was saying before, there are many laws that apply to businesses. It depends on the type of business you are doing. If it is just a simple business where you're all Nigerian nationals, it's fine. For instance, if you want to bring in foreigners into your company, after you have dealt with the CAC, you have to now deal with some other bodies. If you're into exportation, for instance, after you deal with CAC, you have to deal with some other bodies too. Okay, there is the NEPC. They deal with exportation. So you can't just wake up and begin to export things out of Nigeria and think nobody's going to ask you questions. So you need to register with certain agencies depending on the nature of your business. So I tell people, you cannot know all the laws that apply to your business if you do not ask. And that's one thing why I tell people that, look, it's important to always have a legal advisor for your business. No matter how little, just have a legal advisor. It doesn't mean you should go and retain a firm that will be charging you a lot of money. No. Even if it's a lawyer friend you have, or you have access to a lawyer you know, if there's a lawyer in your mosque or in your church or in your neighborhood, just have them on speed dial so you can ask, oh, please, I'm going into this business. What laws do you think would regulate me? What do you think I should know? Things that you think I should do? Because the kind of business you want to do will determine the kind of laws you need to follow. But the laws I've stated are just the basics for almost any type of business or every type of business. It's important to just know that, okay, these laws apply to you. The CAMA, the Labor Act, the Pension Reform Act, these acts apply to you no matter what you do. Now, even if you're a sole proprietor, you work alone, at least from your business, you pay yourself something, right? So even you still have to pay payee from that business you do, because you pay yourself something, some form of remuneration, salaries, and all that. So basically, that's for the business part. That's for the laws you need to know that guide your business. Now, so let's say you have started this business. You also have to worry about your intellectual property. Intellectual property laws apply to businesses, no matter how small. The first one is that name you're using to do business. You know that if you want to own a brand and you want this name to be yours, even though you have done a CSE registration, that does not cover intellectual property. You need to now trademark your name. So you need to get a trademark for your trade name. It's important. Many people think, oh, once I do CSE registration, that's the end of it. That's not the end of it, because that name, somebody else may be using that name you have used to register a business, but has not registered a business as well. That's when you now have cases of infringement suits up and down, because somebody, in addition to getting CSE registration, did not go and secure a name. For instance, I would use the Coca-Cola company as an example. Even though it's a registered company, it is also a brand. And so when you pick up a bottle of Coke and you see Coca-Cola, you will see TM there. That TM tells you that it's a registered trademark. So nobody anywhere in the world can use Coca-Cola again, because it's a global brand. It's the same thing with MTN. MTN is a brand where it comes from. Now, because of intellectual property laws, MTN is also registered in Nigeria because they do business in Nigeria. So you have MTN, then you have MTN Nigeria. It's one company, but they register all over the world where their services are in use. So it's not enough to just register a company and begin to use your name and think you're home and dry. No. If that brand name is important to you, if your company is a brand to you, then you have to go the further step to register that trademark, so that your name isn't just a company name, but it's now that of a brand, and no other person can use that brand. Sometimes you can have a company and then you register a product as a brand under it. So you may not need to register not every trade name or every trademark is a company. But when you have a company and you have different products, you register the trademark. So for instance, let me give an example. Now we know that the makers, Indo Foods, the makers of Indomie, before they were acquired, were also making mini-me noodles. So you don't need to register mini-me noodles as a company. You just register it as a trade name. So while Indo Foods has a trademark that is Indomie, you also have mini-me. So those are trademarks registered under a business. Those trademarks are owned by the business. So it doesn't have to be someone registering several companies. So let's remember that if we want our brands to remain our personal properties and we want them to stay, we may need to go ahead to register the trademarks. There is also this issue we have of conflicting trademarks. So you can always bring a suit to get somebody to stop using your trademark. Many times we have people who just have this trade name and they begin to use them. They've used them for like 10 years, but they did not register. Somebody picks up on the fact that, oh, you're not registered, then they go and register your name. You can get that name back if you can show that you have been in the market for a long time, you have built goodwill over time. The courts would look at your evidence, your market survey, your invoices, and then you would get that name back. Plus damages too for someone who tried to steal your mark. But why go through all that hurdle when you could have just registered the trademark in the first place? So intellectual property laws are very important. Now, some of us have businesses and we're into the business of producing musical works, literary works, writing books. Okay, so we have a company, but the company does these particular businesses. You need to copyright these things you're doing. So a copyright is important. So whilst your businesses are doing great because you're registered, you need to now look at the IP laws. If you have made any inventions, for example, I heard about the gentleman who invented the yam pounder, for instance. So when he made that yam pounder, he had to patent that invention. He had to get a patent over that invention. Now, you can always sell your patent or you assign your copyright or assign your trademark to anybody, but it's important that you at least own them first and have them registered in the first place. So there is the Copyright Commission, there is the Trademark Registry, and then there is the Patents and Designs Registry too. So when you have all these works, when your company is into all these things, it is important to also take a step by registering so that your copyright or your trademark is not stolen from you. Ideas alone are not copyrightable, but when you have put them in a particular form and you've expressed them in a written form or a tangible form, you can then go ahead to copyright or trademark or patent these things in tangible form. So business owners should always take that step. Okay, don't say, oh, I don't have money, let me wait. You need to go the extra mile to secure your treasure, secure it. If in the long run you want to sell it or you want to give somebody license to use for a while, that is fine. You can always have agreements on license to use or an assignment or an outright sale, whatever it is you want to do, but go the extra mile of securing these things. So intellectual property laws also guide businesses too. When you're doing businesses that you need to trademark or copyright or patent, it's very important. Now, because there are so many laws to comply with, you may not know. So please, you need to always employ the services of professionals. Now, the lawyers, legal advice, I mentioned that is very important. You need to have accountants at speed dial as well, because we are not all gifted with keeping our books and doing our profiles properly. So you need to have a consultant who is an accountant who will put your books in order, arrange your books. If you have employees, for instance, and you're paying salaries, they have to calculate the taxes payable for your employees and let you know, okay, this is how much you remit to the relevant tax authority at the end of every month. Also, you're paying VAT, you have to ensure that you're remitting these things regularly. For companies who withhold tax, because withholding tax is also a thing. For companies who withhold tax, you have to know the percentage to withhold, and you also have to remit. Now, after remittance, you have to get your credit, you have to get your evidence, your credit notes, and furnish the person whose tax you have withheld to them. It's important because when you furnish the tax you have withheld to them, they would also use it to reduce their liability when the relevant tax authorities come for assessment. So all these things are very important. So in order to keep up with compliance, because compliance is at all levels, you need to have professionals as your beck and call who would advise you of the recent developments, because laws are evolving all the time. Before it was CAMA 1990, and then before you know it, 2020 came up, and many things came under it. So you have to have people who would always review these laws and get back to you on the things that have changed. Okay, on the new developments that have emerged in law, because the laws are always changing. You cannot sit back in 1990 and think that the laws will wait for you. The laws are emerging, so you have to keep abreast of these issues. And because you're a busy business person, you cannot follow up with all these things. So you have professionals who will keep you up to date. That's the best way to keep up. Also, if you're going into the capital markets, for example, the Investment and Securities Act would apply to you, the ISA. So you have to have professionals in that field who would advise you on these things. So many people always make the mistake that, oh, because I'm a small business, tax laws do not apply to me. That's wrong. Tax laws apply to you, like I mentioned before. All the relevant taxes you have to pay. You have to pay them. Because the moment you begin to default on your taxes, there are two things involved. You will pay that tax you have defaulted, and then you pay penalties. And penalties are calculated from the date of default to the very date you remit. So it's important that we keep abreast of these things. So basically, there are many laws. There are many laws that apply to us as business owners. Now, under the CAMA, because that is the first point of call for many businesses, it is important to know the share capital for the various types of businesses you want to run. If you're running a business name, you don't need the share capital. You get just a proprietor or two. If it's a sole proprietorship or a partnership, you get that out of the way. Now, for certain types of businesses, you need to understand the nature of business and know the requirements, and then the share capital, because some businesses have a minimum share capital. For instance, if you're having foreign partnership, in your company. Maybe you have a foreign shareholder in the company. Your minimum share capital is already 10 million naira by the CAC. That is the minimum. You can't go beyond it. So you need to understand the various share capitals for various businesses. It's very important. If you're going into the college business, it's 5 million and on and on. So you can't know these things, but the CAC has regulations published on the site. So you can just go through it, look at what your business requires. Or, like I always say, just contact a lawyer or an accountant and they'll let you know the various share capitals required. Now, also when you register with the CAC, businesses always forget to file annual returns. They always forget. Please, as a business name, you need to file your returns regularly, even as a company. It's called annual returns because it is once a year. Now, what failure to file annual returns does now is that the CAC now has a mechanism that when you do not file your annual returns and your filings are not up to date, your company shows as inactive on the CAC portal. Many people have come recently to complain, oh, my company is showing inactive, but I'm doing business. It means that you're not updating the commission on the status of your company. You're not filing your returns to state whether you have started business or not, or to furnish them with your turnover, whether you're a small company or a large company. So when you're not filing returns and since it has no up-to-date records of what you're doing, your company will be marked as inactive on the portal. And so when you want to do business with people and you give them your company name and they go and do a search on you, they will see inactive. And then they come and say, oh, the CAC says you're inactive, and then you start running helter-skelter. So when you find that your company is showing inactive, really, there are a few things involved. It just means that you have to file your annual returns. Make sure it's up to date. Once you file your annual returns and they accept, you now do an application by way of a formal letter to the CAC requesting that they reactivate your company. And once you file your returns and they're accepted and you're sent an acknowledgement and you put in the application for reactivation, within a week, if you go back to the portal, you find that your company is now active. So please, let's always remember, once in a year, we file our annual returns, stating the net assets, the turnover of the company, and things like that. That's basically what the CAC requires. If you are a small company, you don't need to have your statement of accounts. But if you are not a small company, if you're a large company, now for the CAC, a small company is a company that has a turnover of less than 10 million. But if your turnover is over 10 million, you're categorized as a large company. You now need to prepare your statement of accounts. So you have to get an accountant to prepare a statement of accounts for you. And then when that is done, this is what you file and upload to the CAC portal. And once that is done, you are deemed to have filed your annual returns. Of course, you fill an annual returns form on the site as well as upload your statement of accounts, and that is done. Now, for companies with share capital of over 10 million, for instance, and you have not commenced business, you just file your statement of affairs stating that the company is yet to commence business. So even if you've not started doing business, you have to file to tell the commission that, oh, I have not started doing business. You have to do that every year until you begin to do business. Otherwise, your company will be marked as inactive or your business will be marked as inactive. So please, let's always remember these things. It is important so that we will not just lose good business because when our investors went to check, they said that we're inactive. And many people don't even know what this means or the implication or why it's there. They just assume that, oh, this is not an active business. Let me not invest in it, or let me not do business with them, let me not give them businesses. So these are important things. So basically, this is a summary of the laws guiding businesses, what the regulation says, and everything. But please note that this is not all the laws, because I cannot, if I begin to give you all the laws guiding every business here, we're going to be here for the next 3 hours because there are various laws, as I said, depending on what you do. It depends on the nature of business you carry out. I mentioned earlier that if you are into exportations, you have to get a license from the NEPC to run your export business. If you have foreign direct investments, you have to go to the NIPC to bring in foreign investments. If you're bringing foreign technology, you have to go to the NOTAP. You have to go through NOTAP. NOTAP is the National Office for Technological Acquisition and Promotion. So there are many laws that relate to businesses, but it depends on what you want to do.
Right.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that is a brief summary of the various laws that regulate businesses, whether you're micro, whether you're small, whether you're medium, and whether you're large.
Wow. Thank you
So there you have
so
it.
Thank you, Ima. This is so rich, and then it's a lot. We really, I mean, it's so much. Thank you so much for opening the eyes of small business owners to see the laws that are available to guiding them. It is very important that small businesses are learning this on this webinar, because a lot of small businesses just think, you know what, it's just me, it's just my business. I don't have anything to do. I don't have any laws. I don't have any obligations. Nothing is applicable to me. But this webinar has really opened our eyes so much to see what is available and what small business owners can do. Thank you so much, Ma. I mean, even myself, I had a lot of notes that I've taken, a lot of things that I have written down. Thank you so much for opening our eyes to what small business owners can do. Okay, I think, there's
I think I'm sounding low a bit. Is it better now?
Much better, much better.
Oh, okay, thank God. I think it was the earpiece that I'm using, it just went off at some point. So thank you so much. We have a couple of questions coming from our participants. So at this time, if you have questions, we can only take two audio. You can please raise your hand so that we'll take two audio questions. But we have another question in the chat section. I'll just go ahead and read that. And this person is asking that just a minute, it just went off. She's asking that he wants to know about articles and memorandum of association. How does that relate to his business? That's the first
Okay,
question.
so we call those MEMAs, memorandum and articles of association. This is for companies only. If a business name, you don't have a memorandum or articles of association. So basically, what a memorandum does is that it states the name of the business. It now states the objects of the business, which is for companies. Now, companies, as a company, you can have up to 10, 20 objects. So that your articles and memorandum will state all the objects of the companies. And then it's to also show particulars of your shareholders and the percentage of shareholding they hold. The members will contain, so basically your members contains, let me start from the top now. Your members will contain the name of the company, the nature of business, the various objects. It will contain, yes, so the memorandum will contain your the share capital of the company, the shareholdings, and how it's distributed between the shareholders. But that document, memorandum and articles, is only applicable to companies, private companies, public companies, big companies, small companies. It does not apply to business names.
Okay, Ma, thank you so much for that clarification. I'm sure that Bala Mohammed, you have clarification on that question. If you have questions and you want to say your questions via audio, please raise a hand so I can grant you permission to say your questions via audio. So thank you so much, Ma. It's been an amazing time learning from you. We just want to take two more questions and then we'll come towards the end of the program. Okay, so do we have somebody raising their hand? Just a minute. I'm trying to check through. Okay, so, okay, I'm not seeing anybody raise their hand. Maybe you just type your question in the chat section and then we'll move. So somebody is already saying thank you so much that this webinar is an eye-opening for them. So personally, I have a question that I want to ask concerning terms of privacy, if it's applicable to small business owners. You made us understand that about the trademark, which is very important. A lot of small businesses usually neglect that, and then by the time they are now big, to get that name used to be very difficult. But are there any laws regarding privacies or anything that has to do with, maybe, okay, this is my content, I have to take permission to get content from this person, or I took this thing from this person's page, or I took this person's video? Is there anything around privacy and content laws?
Yes, privacy laws apply to businesses no matter how small. No matter how small. Privacy, data protection. The data protect the, today, There are data protection laws in Nigeria and they apply to businesses as well. So for instance, if you have a small business and you want to protect your content, you will now have to do a confidentiality and non-disclosure agreement, either with your employees or with other persons who have access to your confidential information. So yes, privacy policy applies. Now, certain businesses actually get their non-disclosure agreements, confidentiality and non-disclosure agreements. So those NDAs, when you my connection was reset.
Okay, okay. Oh,
It
it's
was
fine,
reset.
ma.
So this is one important thing I need to tell small businesses. No matter how small you are, your confidential information remains confidential and you should protect it by all means at all costs. So even if it means you have to get someone to a confidentiality and non-disclosure agreement for your employees to sign. Now, for those of you who are into the food business and you discover recipes every day, your recipe is your private information. If you're on an eatery, for instance, and you have discovered a new recipe for the sauce for a burger, and you have shown it to your employee, they need to sign that they will not disclose it to anybody else. It's important. And it's not restricted to food, to any other business. If you have confidential information as to your methodology, your client information, your clientele, your employees have to sign it. Now, for some employers, they include it into the employment contracts. So it's there, confidential information, so that when they breach it, you would get remedies. So privacy policies, data protection laws apply to businesses no matter how small. If you're also a small business and you're going to pitch an idea to a multinational, you can go there with your NDA and say, please, you need to sign that whatever we're discussing at this meeting will not be disclosed. Do not let anybody bully you into just allowing it, because they will take your ideas, flip it around and put their name on it, and there's nothing you can do about it. So please, these things apply as well. So that's that about the confidential information and the privacy policies. They apply as well, actually.
All right, thank you so much, ma, for that clarification. I'm sure that the person who asked that question already have a clarification on how to go about that. So we have two people who raise their hand and want to send their question by via audio. I mean, so Triple Star Media, I granted you permission. Please go ahead and unmute your mic and ask your question. Triple Star, are you there? Can you hear me?
Hello, good morning, everyone.
Good morning,
Hello,
welcome.
good morning, sir.
Yeah, please, I want to know, my question is on trademark. I don't know if you've treated that because I came late due to network. My network was giving me issues. So I want to know more about trademark, because as a business, I run a business, a service. Okay, I'm into photography and graphic design. So based on trademark and logo kind of a thing, because especially in Nigeria here, someone can use your business or your logo to do let's say something like a backdrop. For example, let's say the person is having an event, then just that the person want to hype the event, then the person tries to take your logo and other popular businesses like MTN or other brands to put in the backdrop. So once I see something like that, what's the best way to address this issue? I just want to know if there are some laws guiding this. Thank you.
All right. All right, Triple Star Media. So basically, we had already discussed the issue of trademarks under intellectual property laws that apply to businesses. Yes, as a business, even though you have registered your company or your business name, you need to go a step further by registering your brand or your trademark or your trade name, so that that logo or that expression of your idea or the way you have designed the mark is now personal to you alone and nobody can steal it. Of course, the issue of infringement will always come up. If you go to an event and you find that they have used your logo without your authorization, the first thing you do is you need evidence. So please take a picture or record it. Move a step further and record the entire event so that you have it on. You have tangible evidence. Approach the person who has done this and let them know that this mark belongs to you. But before you can even claim ownership of a mark, it is important that you have registered this mark. Because if you have not registered the mark, you cannot bring an infringement action. What you can bring is an action in passing off. It's something we call passing off in law. Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Okay, you can hear me. Good. So there's something we call passing off in law. Passing off is a common law right you have when you have not registered your mark, or you've been using your mark for a very long time and everybody knows it belongs to you. But just so that you can have your rights protectable under the Act, we always advise that you register your mark so everybody knows it belongs to you. For instance, nobody can use a Coca-Cola logo without Coca-Cola's permission anywhere in the world. You would be sued. They will file an infringement action against you, and you will have to pay heavily to use that mark. So that's that about trademarks and infringement. So if someone infringes on your registered trademark, then you can go ahead and file an action and demand compensation for the use of that mark, and also prevent them from continuous use, which may mislead the public. So that's that on the trademark you mentioned.
All right, Ma, thank you so much for that clarification. I'm sure that Triple D has clarification on that. So we have one more person that would like to say their question via audio. Zainab, please unmute your mic and go ahead with your question.
Okay, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. And thanks, Ma, for this class. Is really timely, and I learned a lot. Please, I want to ask a question concerning annual returns. In a situation where you registered a company and you've not been using it for long, then like after some years now, you want to start using it and you are asked to pay annual returns. My question is, since you've not been using since when you register, you've not been using it, is there any way you can explain that you've not been using it? Because you just said now that one need to be filling a form that you are not in business, but you've not been filling that form, because I'm just hearing it now. Like, is now that I just get that knowledge. So what can one do then if is not going to be possible, if you are asked that you must pay annual return for those years that you did not use the business name or the company name? I want to know if one can pay maybe like in parts, maybe like you pay like 3 years now, maybe next year you balance up. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. Yes, I had mentioned this issue of annual returns that your company being inactive, because many business owners don't know. They just register to secure their name, and that's the end. They just keep it there because they believe that once registered, the name is secured, and they can come back whenever they like. Yes, the CSD will keep your name, but you have to keep filing it. Now, if you have not filed your annual returns, let's say for 5 years, and you're now ready to do business, you want to do business, the CSC will tell you that, oh, your company is inactive. So to activate, you now have to go to the portal and begin to file your annual returns for all those 5 years. Now, if your business name is easy because you just fill a form, they will ask you for net assets. You can put nil there, turnover, nil. So they know that you've not done business, but you're just filing your annual returns because you have not commenced business. When it was manual filing, it was easier because you just put not applicable yet to commence business. But now it's online, so you just put nil there and they will see that you're filing nil returns. Sadly, whether you've done business or not, you have to still pay for annual returns, sadly. So for business names, it's 3,000 naira to file per year. For companies, it's 5,000 naira per year. But the penalty is 5,000 naira for each year. So for instance, if you have not filed annual returns since 2020, you have to pay 3,000 naira, then 5,000 naira penalty. That's 8,000 for 2020, 8,000 for 2021. 2022, you're still in the year 2022, so you won't pay penalty. You just pay 3,000 naira to file. So that's how it is. Now, yes, if, for instance, you find that you have not filed business annual returns for 10 years, You can file the first 5 years, and then when you have funds, you continue. But until you're done filing all the 10 years and you apply for reactivation, your company will still remain inactive on the portal. But that doesn't mean you cannot do business with the company. You can do business with the company because it's validly existing and subsisting. You just have to wait until you do your filings. Also, if you're a business name and you have not filed annual returns, the CAC will not accept any subsequent filing. For instance, if you want to file change of address with the CAC will query your application for change of address and tell you to file your annual returns first. If your annual returns is not up to date, you cannot do any filing. You cannot file change of directors, increase in shareholding. You cannot add new shareholders. You cannot file additional proprietor. You can't do anything at the CAC on their records. Off the books, you can get your new directors on board, change your address and all that, change your letterheads, but you cannot file it with the CAC until you have filed your annual returns. So the annual returns is very, very important for subsequent filings and also so that your records will be up to date with the CAC. Now, many people, especially those who want to leave the country, always have this issue. When you apply to the embassy and you say you own a business, the embassy would go and check your business. Once they see inactive, you won't get that visa. So you have to now quickly run to file all your returns and then apply to be active, and then you become active. So it's important that we put all the things in place, sometimes for personal use, sometimes for the sake of the business itself. I hope that answers your question, Ma.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ma.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Ma, for that clarification. I'm sure that these questions that she asked, is also an eye opener for a lot of other small businesses that are on this webinar that has, same issue. Thank you so much for opening our eyes to what small businesses should do, when they are doing business in Nigeria. We have one more question from a small business owner as we begin to round up the webinar. And this person is asking that if she's not making any profits, is she also supposed to file any form of tax to the CAC if the business has not been making profits? But she is in business, but she's not making profit.
If your business is not making profit, you will still be required to file returns. Your returns is just telling CAC that, oh, this business is either doing business or not doing business. So even if you are running a deficit, you just have to update your records that this business exists.
Okay.
So annual returns is not about whether you're making profit or not. It's just what you're supposed to file. Profits, making profit or not, has to do with your company income tax if you're a company. But if you're a business name, it's fine.
Then we have one more last question as we round up the session. So, what advice would you give to a business owner that has within 3 to 5 staff? Would you advise them to register as just a business name or as a limited liability company?
Okay, so this particular one depends on what you want to do. Honestly, I tell people for a business name, if you would want to operate as a business name, it's fine. If you want to be a company, you can be a company. Now, if you're interested in getting deals or getting jobs from the government, contracts basically, government doesn't really give contracts to business names. They give it to companies. So it depends. And as a company, you are required to, that companies and business names are different because as a business name, you can just be one person trading under a name. But as a company, you now talk about having a shareholder, having a director, you talk about having a share capital, talk about memorandum and articles, shareholders agreements, depending on how large you are. You talk about company income tax, payee, capital gain tax, and all those things. Now, company income tax does not apply to business because I'm not a company, but for a company, you have more tax obligations and all that. So that's it. So it depends on the nature of business you want to do. It's okay to start as a business name, and then when you're big enough, you can actually register that business name as a company. It's allowed. So you can start small, and then as you expand, once you're big enough and you want to, then you can go become a company.
All right. Thank you so much for that understanding. So if one starts off as a business name, right, and then you want to transit into the company, do you have to like file for a new name, or is it possible that you just do an upgrade with CAC, or you have to start from beginning and start searching for the name?
So basically, it's the same name. You do a name search afresh, but with the same name, and then there is a column where to ask you the purpose of the search. So there's a column where it has new registration or where it has registration as from company to business name. You click on that option that you want to convert from business name to a company. Once you click on that option, it will now ask you to upload your business name certificates. Once you upload it and show that it's the same person, then that will be done.
All right, man. Thank you so much. It's been an amazing
If
time.
you're the owner of the business,
Yeah.
if you're the owner of the business, you just have to write an application and then sign. So once the CAC checks it and sees that, okay, you're the proprietor of that business name, applying to be a company, your name set to be approved, and then you can just go ahead and register.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much, Maita. It's been an awesome time learning from you. Thank you so much. Thank you to the Agile&Clover Attorneys at Law. We really, really appreciate you. Thank you so much for your time. And I wanted to also know, ask if these small businesses, if they need these services for, some of these things that you talk about, that they need to get professionals, that they need to get lawyers. I'm sure that they could reach out to the company if they need some of these services. I wanted to ask you that if they could.
Yes, they can reach out to us. We render these services to small and micro and medium scale enterprises.
Okay, ma. Thank you so much. Thank you. We really, really appreciate you. Thank
Sorry,
you for
I saw a question now. Someone asking if someone less than 18 years old can be a shareholder.
Okay, yeah, it's just
A minor shareholder, yes. Yes, someone less than 18 can be a shareholder, but then you need to have someone else who is of age as a co-shareholder.
okay. Yeah, that's for someone who wants to register as a limited liability company that has shares.
Yes, so you can have a company and put your 2-year-old son there as a shareholder. It's fine, but you have to be there or someone older as well as a shareholder.
Okay.
It's fine.
Okay, so we will not be able to take any more questions at this time because we're coming towards the end of the program. It's already 12:05 and we've already gone off there. So, Ma, before we just round up, I just wanted to say your own, maybe in 2 minutes, what you think that this small business owner should know. I mean, what are your advice for them going forward? And then, because sometimes, and the perception that a lot of this small business has is because I'm small or because it's just me, I don't need to do this, I don't need to do that. But this webinar has actually opened our eyes to a lot of things that small business should do, the laws that are guiding them, what are their obligations as business owners, to Nigeria as a whole. So, what are your last word or advice, or what do you have to say to this small business owners as we round up?
All right, I will say this: no matter how small you are, ensure that you comply with the laws because you never can tell when government wants to give incentives to companies. Ensure that all your papers are complete. Comply with the CAC, comply with the tax laws, comply with labor laws, and comply with pension laws if you are obligated to. Once you comply with all these things, and then always ensure that you have a professional at hand to advise you. Legal services, accountancy services are very important. Regulatory services, know your industry and know who to go to for information. It is okay to not have all the information at hand, but know where to get it and know people who can give them to you. And that's it. Always strive to do the right thing. Go by the books. Do not cut corners because it pays to go by the books. So no matter how difficult it is, don't cut corners. Do not withhold tax from government. Just do what you have to do.
Okay, ma.
That's what I'll say.
Thank you so much. I believe that's the best advice because the essence of knowing all these laws, knowing all these regulations is so that we can comply. And then just like you said, when opportunities arise, you're able to present your papers, you're able to say, oh, this is this, I have this, I have that, and then you're able to get that opportunity because you were able to comply to the laws. Thank you so much, Ma. It has been an amazing time learning from you. Please have a wonderful weekend and our warmest regards to everybody at the Agile&Global. Thank you so much.
Likewise. You're welcome.
Have a great weekend.
Likewise.
Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us at this time.